Yesterday we talked about Jesus' first sign, which was changing water to wine. One of the things that we did mention was how the bride and groom, they were able to have such a wonderful outcome of this banquet because Jesus was invited into their banquet, right? And this is also, spiritually speaking, what also can happen to our marriages if we really invite Jesus Christ into our homes and families. Okay. I remember there was a testimony where there was this sister. She married someone who wasn't a church member. She married an unbeliever. And unfortunately, there was also domestic violence. Right? So when she went to church, some members would notice some bruises and things. And at first she would just say, oh, I just kind of hit this or hit that. I bumped into this. But privately at home, it was a very intense type of environment. And she wasn't just one who would just get beaten, right? She would also fight back. And then it's the type where both parties were very violent towards one another, right? Where, knives were being thrown, where woks were being smashed on people's heads and stuff. So that was, unfortunately, the circumstance. And one time she attended I think it was like a marriage type of workshop at church. And it was the first time she ever attended one of these, and I think maybe one of the first times she ever heard some of these teachings. And she was also sharing with the instructor at the time of what was going on in her home. But from the workshop, she learned what God really is asking of wives, and what the Bible teaches about marriage. So when she went home, she really repented and told God, I know I've done wrong in the past. I haven't fulfilled my duty. I won't make the same mistake again, right? And so she started to really change herself, the way she interacted with her husband. And so one time, I think it was evening time, she was making a meal for her husband. And, the relationship had soured to a point where the husband was thinking, that's so strange. Why is she making me a meal? Is there poison in there, right? And he didn't touch it. But then she didn't get mad. She just cleaned everything up. Okay, you didn't want to eat, no problem. Just clean it. And then the husband was just noticing, wow, something's really strange about my wife. Okay, but he didn't say anything. In the end, I think that night, that night the wife went to sleep, and the husband was just kind of really suspicious and just thinking what's going on. So he just kind of sat there watching her sleep. And in the end, it seems like he saw a vision too. Okay, I think he saw that God appeared to him that night, and basically Jesus Christ was telling him, next time you touch my daughter again, you'll see what's going to happen, something like that, right? And then so the next morning, the wife got up. She didn't know about that vision or anything, and she started to make breakfast for her husband and just kind of be kind and do what she knew she should do. And then she started talking, right, with her husband, and husband was asking, hey, what happened? How come, things are so different? And then she was saying, I attended the church workshop. I knew before I wasn't doing the right thing, but I know I have to change and do the right thing. All right. And then she was saying, I feel the Jesus I believe in is so powerful. And then he said, yeah, really, your Jesus is really powerful. And then he shared with her the vision that he saw the previous night. So long story short, eventually this husband started to also go to church to study the truth. And eventually became baptized. And also from the testimony that I heard, because it was a recording, I don't know, it wasn't the exact couple that was making the testimony, it was the instructor that was giving that testimony. So apparently, like, this couple now is like just faithful workers in the church. Like, you couldn't even tell that they used to be so violent towards one another. So when we invite Jesus into our family, our marriage, then something that's very, it doesn't even have to be violent, okay? But something like just water can turn to wine, something very joyful, something very abundant, okay? And it could be such a very wonderful time, because as the book of Ecclesiastes says, right, our time under the sun is vanity of vanities. But when we really have a loving marriage in Christ, it is God's reward. It's God's blessing. And it really is like heaven on earth, right? It really is like heaven on earth. Like when I got married, first year was very tough. First year, maybe like first year and a half was very tough, because just getting used to one another. And we did have a lot of arguments and disagreements. And I remember one time too, because soon after I joined the TTP, and we were studying the book of John, and we were studying this particular miracle. And I think at that time we just happened to have somewhat of a disagreement too, even though I was away and then she was back at home. And then when I was reading this particular miracle, and it just really touched me a lot, because I was like, hey, our relationship isn't like as ideal right now, but God, please fulfill, please help us so that we can really glorify you in our marriage. And thank God, little by little, I think through communication, I think just coming to grow and understand each other, and also changing ourselves, then right now I feel like, our family, our marriage, I really thank God, right? I really thank God for what God has given to me, right? Married 15 years now. And so marry in the Lord, but not only marry in the Lord, but bring Christ into your home. Right, really, like as a husband, I knew there were some things that I needed to change. There were some immature things that I had to change. There was some impatience that I had to also overcome. So those are the kind of things that will reveal itself too when you eventually get married. Like, you'll see yourself very clearly. You didn't think you were something, but actually now you realize, wow, it's very in your face. And this is when we need to rely on Jesus, put his teachings into practice, fulfill your role as a husband, fulfill your role as a wife, from what the Bible says. Practice, those teachings, and the family, the marriage, it will be like heaven on earth, right? Really like heaven on earth. All our vain days under the sun, right, really can be so joyful. So invite Jesus Christ into not only your wedding banquet, right, but into your actual marriage. Okay? Put aside all those concepts that you get from media and from social media about, what's the ideal type of marriage type of thing. Go back to the Bible, right? Basically, I think all problems in marriage is because one or the other, whether the husband or the wife, we're not doing something that Jesus is asking us to do, right? And we can't really change the other person, but the person you can really change is yourself, right? So let Jesus into your marriage, and let his teachings change you so that your marriage can become very wonderful and glorious to God. Also, when it comes to weddings, one thing I wanted to mention too is, remember, a wedding is a religious service, okay? again, don't be misguided by social media. Oh, this beautiful. A wedding, the actual wedding is a religious service. It is when you are making a covenant between, of course, you and your spouse, but also with God. And God is officiating this marriage and blessing this marriage, just like God did in the Garden of Eden. Right? It's a religious service. So when you are eventually getting engaged and planning your wedding, the service itself, you should submit to the church council. Understand? Submit to the church council, because this is a religious service. Like, and let's say there's some like for the sisters, there's a dress you want to wear, but if it's not appropriate for the church, then to submit to the church council, right? Because it's still a religious gathering, so you don't want like super low or like something too revealing or anything in the church, because the attention is not on you, the attention is on God, right? And God blessing this marriage. So please also keep that in mind, okay? Yeah. So we want the wedding itself to glorify God and God to bless the marriage. That's the most important thing. It's not about show or pictures or videos and romanticism and things like that. Although it's not mutually exclusive, but the main thing is, God blessing and God's presence in your wedding and marriage, right? That's the most important thing. Okay, so those are some teachings we can gain from this particular sign. Let's move on, because this is already the fourth class, and there's a lot that we can cover. Let's go to the next sign. The next sign is the healing of the nobleman's son. This is recorded in John chapter 4. John chapter 4, and it's recorded from verse 46. So, let's read this really quickly. Let's take turns to read this. Let's go over here to Ethan Huang, 2 verses, 46, 47. Okay, 48 and 49, Justin. Okay, 50, 51, Mark. Okay, 52, 53, Hao Shen. Okay, 54, Felix. Okay, amen. This is the second sign Jesus did, right? So Jesus he went to Jerusalem after turning the water to wine, right? Because in chapter 2, verse 13, he went to keep the Passover. He cleansed the temple, and then he met Nicodemus, which I plan to talk about in the afternoon prayer today, and then. Then he was going also up to Samaria and talked to the Samaritan woman. So he's back in Cana. He's back in the Galilee region. And he meets a nobleman. Okay, he's a royal official. And his son was sick in Capernaum. Okay. And why did the nobleman go and seek him? because his son was sick to the point of death. Okay, it was a very intense fever, according to verse 52. And like we read yesterday, Jesus acknowledged, unless people see signs and wonders, people will not believe. Right? So then the nobleman asked Jesus, please come down, right? Come with me before my child dies. But instead, Jesus just said, go your way, your son lives. And at that word, the nobleman believed. Okay, he didn't insist, oh, Jesus, you have to come down. And so the nobleman went back to Capernaum. On the journey, his servants came to meet him and says, your son lives. And then he inquired when did he get better? It was at the 7th hour the fever left him, right? And that was the same hour that Jesus Christ said, your son lives, right? And then so everyone, the whole household believed too because of this incident. Okay. So, this journey would have taken probably a whole day from Cana to Capernaum. Right, this is a map. Cana is more towards the west, towards the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. Capernaum is right on the Sea of Galilee. And so while he was going back, the servants came to try to find him. And they found him and said, your son is living. Okay, so what does this sign show? Why did John select this sign? What does it illustrate? This sign indicated how Jesus, his power, it can transcend space, right? Transcend space and distance. Right? He could heal with just his word. Right? Whose words can be so powerful? You just say it and then it happens. Of course, only someone like God. Okay. So for the nobleman, we can see his journey, right? His journey of coming to believe in Jesus. It says he heard, right? Verse 47 was he heard that Jesus was in Galilee, right? He originally was in Capernaum. Then there's word being spread. Oh, he's in Galilee now. So then he went, right? He went. Then he implored. He asked. And then he believed Jesus' word. And then he knew that the timing of the healing was exactly when Jesus said, your son lives. So he himself believed, right? So this is, notice there's a sorry, got to do my pen. Notice there's a believe here, and there's a believe here, right? And then the whole household believed because he was sharing that was the timing that Jesus Christ, that was the time that Jesus Christ said, your son lives. So this is kind of like what I was saying yesterday. When you are in a like kind of low point in faith and you're going through some doubts, what is the best thing to do? Yesterday I was saying, listen to more testimonies, right? Signs, right? Talk to people, talk to your peers. Like, how has God worked in your life? Why do you have this faith in God? Why is your faith in God so strong, right? These are people that you know and trust, and they can give you that spark, a seed of faith to just continue to try and continue to go on, right? Here is something similar, okay? Here is where the first step is you just trust what Jesus says. Just trust it. Believe it, right? Jesus said, your son lives, and no one just believed. He didn't like say, no, you have to come with me. No, I have to see with my own eyes. No, he just believed that Jesus had that power to say, your son lives, and the son will be living. Okay? So he didn't see it yet, right? He didn't see with his own eyes. So that's also a way to get out of doubt. You have to just take God's word as it is. Trust in his promises. Trust in the power of his words. And then later on, you'll have experience. When you have experience, like that's when you know, right? You're like, oh wow, that is very powerful. And then now your belief is even stronger, isn't it? Right? Your belief is even stronger. And that's a way to have a positive reinforcing cycle in your faith. And in fact, when your faith is stronger, you can influence the people around you too. The whole household also started to believe in Jesus. Okay. So there's so many different promises in the Bible. Take it as it is and put your trust in it. Okay. And then you'll eventually have some experience. The first one of the clearest times that happened in my own life was when I was 17. Right? Because, it's a long testimony, but basically that year, second half of age 16 into 17, there's a lot of satanic attacks that I experienced at night. Like every week, every other week, some kind of very frightful experience. So that was going on for, March 2. So already 7 months. And I even attended this SSC that changed my life. And like before, I knew like I had given place to the devil, so that that's why I was unclean. That's why he could attack me. But after that SSC, I felt like I was pursuing holiness, and I felt like my life was really becoming more and more holy. But this incident that I was talking about happened, I think, in October of that year, 7 months after the first incident. And basically, what happened was I woke up. With my own eyes open, I turned to my left side, and I saw a dead hand there lying in my bed, right? It's dead because I knew from the color it was like purple, blue, like gray type of a color. And when I saw that, I just immediately ran into my parents' room and was in tears. It's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, yeah, and basically, I was just hysterical. Eventually, after talking to my parents, I went downstairs. I didn't want to go to my room right away. I just went downstairs to the living room, and I just started to pray. And that was the first time in my life I experienced the verse Philippians 4, verse 6, right? A very popular, famous verse. Philippians 4, verse 6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Right? That's what you should do when you feel anxious. What is the promise? The promise is verse 7. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. At that time, I remember one of the thoughts I had when I was praying was like, because all the previous experiences wasn't something like I saw with my own eyes. It was usually like with my eyes closed, or like I was almost asleep and I would hear sounds, or or like with my eyes closed, I would see shadows or something. This was with my own eyes open. So one of the thoughts I had at the time was, you know, what if like I'm driving to school, because at that time I was a senior and I had my own car, right? What if I'm driving my car to school and I'm looking at the rearview mirror, and I look at the rearview mirror, and suddenly Satan just pops up like in the rearview mirror, right? I just had no security at that time. But I just kept on praying and praying, and that was the longest time I ever prayed up until to that point in my life. I think it was like a 45-minute prayer, right? Just praying and praying. By the time I got up, though, I just felt this peace that transcended all understanding. God didn't tell me anything. God didn't show me a vision or give me some answer or anything, but just in the Spirit, I had a peace that transcended understanding. Like, I don't even know if I don't even know if God was going to solve this problem or if what was going to happen the next moment. But I got up from that prayer with a peace that transcended all understanding, right? So these are promises. You just trust it, right? You take it as it is, and you try to put it into practice, into your life. Just do it, right? Pray. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer, by supplication, you just let your requests be made known to God. Right now, what are you anxious for? Maybe it's kind of like, maybe some of the incoming freshmen are anxious for school. What's it going to be like? Who's my roommate? Am I going to do well in classes? What am I going to study? Am I really going to stick with this major? Right? Well, I don't know what my life holds, right? Maybe you have those type of anxieties. Just bring it to God. And the peace of God, which transcends understanding, which surpasses all understanding, can really guard your hearts. Right? You'll feel like, hey, it's going to be okay. Right? God is with me. It's going to be okay. Right? So that's just one example. Okay? So learn from the nobleman, right? Just take Jesus' word at face value. Right? Your faith is kind of like, you have some faith, but it's not like a solid yet, right? But when the nobleman met the servants and then they were telling, hey, your son is well, that's when he knew. And then that's when he believed. And his faith was even more solid. Okay? And that's what we want to mature and grow in as we are in this age. Okay. The servants, I think, also are good for, I think also can teach us some things. They, first of all, were sensitive to their master. So as a servant, you can be a lazy servant or you can be like a good servant, right? You ever work with people at school, like same project? You're not exactly servants, but you're all group project, but then sometimes you got the teammates that just do nothing, and then they just put their name on it, right? Okay. Do you want to work with them again? Probably not. But then you have sometimes really good teammates where they're putting in their, they're putting in their effort. They're also bearing some of the load too, and they're sensitive to the group and know like, hey, I want to contribute too. And those are good ones, right? Good teammates. So these were really good servants, in my opinion. They kind of could anticipate the master would be very anxious about this type of thing, right? Because it's his son. It's his dear son. And the son is basically almost lifeless. So the servants, knowing the master will want to receive this news right away, went on their, right? They went out. And it's not just one, right? His servants, right? Plural, met him and then told him, your son lives. So they're also spreading good news quickly, right? Spreading good news quickly. And this, in a way, is also teaching us about preaching the gospel, right? When there's good news, we should spread it quickly. So we need to be sensitive to also people's needs. Right? The world is lost without God, without the true God. The world is lost without the true gospel. We do have the good news. We have the complete gospel of salvation. Jesus Christ abides in the true Jesus church. Jesus Christ's blood is in the baptism conducted in the true Jesus church. It is the true fountain of cleansing for all humankind, right? And all humankind has sin, right? We have to be sensitive to that need and spread the good news to people, right? The best as we can. Of course, we know nowadays in America or Western culture, it is becoming, and maybe it already is, a post-Christian society. Depends on where you live, right? If you're in a blue state, then it's kind of like a post-Christian society. If you're in a red state, then maybe still a lot of churchgoers, right? Yeah. But overall, on the internet too, just the overall kind of trend of society is it's becoming more and more hostile to Christianity and Christian values. Even though that's the kind of society that we live in, but there's still people out there that are looking for truth, that are looking for direction. The fact that Jesus Christ hasn't come again yet means that the fullness of the Gentiles has not yet come, right? Let's go to Romans chapter, I think it's chapter 9. Romans chapter 9. Or is it chapter 11? Yes, chapter 11. Okay, Romans chapter 11, verse 25. Jeremiah Ho. Romans 11:25. Verse 26. Okay, all right. So this is a revelation that Paul received from God. Right? At the time, it was becoming clear to him that the Jews were rejecting Jesus, were rejecting the gospel, even though the earliest Christians were Jewish. Right? But Paul was seeing that the Jews had become blinded. Why? So that the Gentiles can now come to faith in Jesus and be saved. But Paul realizes that Israel, the Jews, are not going to be completely forsaken by God. That one day, when the fullness of the Gentiles has come, then all Israel will come and believe in Jesus, will come to the truth, to the true church, okay, and believe in Jesus. So the fact that that hasn't happened yet, right, that there's also still time, as far as we know, okay, even though we don't know the day or the hour, it tells us that there are people out there that are really seeking, okay, and really thirsty spiritually. So let's spread the good news quickly. Let's not be a lazy servant, right? And just thinking, oh, only when my master comes, then I'll tell him. No, right? Good news should be spread quickly. Yeah. Okay, so this is a miracle that shows how Jesus could transcend space. Today is the same, right? Sometimes when we are in need, of course, it's very helpful when somebody's right next to you, praying for you. And sometimes members do request that. Like, oh, preacher, can you come and pray for me? Can you lay hands on me? Right? Of course, sometimes that helps in their faith. But from the Bible, we have to also understand that, yeah, God, His power, it does not only work through a preacher or minister, right? God's power transcends space. He doesn't have to be literally right next to you. And with a word, He can transform our life, right? I remember one time a testimony where there was a brother. He had a headache. He had a really bad headache. And he called a preacher, right? And then he was telling the preacher about his situation. And if I remember correctly, I think he was intending to ask the preacher to pray for him. But basically, as he was talking to the preacher, he noticed that what side the phone was on, like that helped his headache feel better on that side. So he was talking on this side, and then later he put it this side, and then later his headache was gone. Yeah, okay. And so it wasn't even praying, to the point of praying yet. But yeah, this is how God can really work. Okay? God transcends space, and His word is so powerful. Okay, so in your homework, right? I already gave you an answer for the second part of that homework. But if you have any experiences or testimonies similar to this, please also write that in that section. Okay. Yeah, who can transcend space like that, right? Only God can. Let's go to the next sign. The next sign is in John chapter 5. John chapter 5 from verses 1 through 15. John 5 verses 1 through 15. Yeah, let's also read it quickly. Let's go 3 verses each. Let's go, Benson. Okay, next 3, Johnny. Okay, next 3, Jackson, right? Okay, next 3, Ernie. Okay, last 3, Rick. Okay. Yes, so this is the third sign now. It's the healing of the paralyzed man by the pool of Bethesda. So where's the pool of Bethesda? Here's a map of Jerusalem. So the temple courts are, this is this rectangular here. The actual sanctuary is the dark black rectangle, right? But there's courtyards and pavilions and things around it. Right next to the temple is called this Antonia Fortress, or sometimes known as the Praetorium. That's where Pilate would have been during the trial. But in that area of Jerusalem is this pool of Bethesda. So, what does pool of Bethesda mean? Or Bethesda? Bethesda means house of mercy, right? House of mercy, or house of grace. Bet, Bet means house. And then I think Hesda is similar to a word meaning like love and mercy. Yeah. Okay. So this man of 38 years was laying by the pool. Why was he there? Because he had this hope, right? Every now and then, the sick would realize that an angel would like stir up the water. And whoever stepped in first, after the stirring the water, will be made well, okay, of whatever disease. Yeah, so maybe like they notice some ripples that have no explanation and realize, oh, an angel might have stirred up the water. And if they go in, then they could be healed. Okay, so Jesus found this man there. Okay, Jesus saw him lying. And then Jesus also knew that he had already been there a long time. Then he asked him, do you want to be made well? Right. Okay. And then the man answered. You know, he had been waiting for the water to be stirred, but every time it was stirred, someone would go in first, right? Because he's paralyzed. There's no one to put him in the water. Okay, so Jesus Christ just directly commanded him to rise and take up his bed and to walk. Okay, and immediately he was made well. Okay, here is a photo of, I think, of a model. Okay, a model of Jerusalem during Jesus' time. Okay, so this is the pool of Bethesda in the red. And yeah. And then this is the north side of the temple. The actual temple is right there, right? And then this is the fortress where the Romans would be there to keep the peace. Okay. This is the pool of Bethesda today. I don't know exactly what we're looking at. Okay, but I think they later built a church there. Yeah, in ancient times. But this is the pool of Bethesda today in Jerusalem. Okay. Okay. Now, what can we learn from this particular sign? What does this sign indicate about Jesus? What is John trying to show? I think primarily it is showing that Jesus transcends time. Okay, because in verse 6, it especially talks about how Jesus already knew he was in that condition a long time. Right? 38 years, okay? 38 years. 38 years. Yeah. It's a long time. It's a long time. Yeah, obviously time is relative, but compared to a person's life, 38 years is a long time. Especially back then too, I think their life expectancy wasn't that long. So 38 years is, a good chunk of your life already. And so even though he was in that state for a long time, right, we actually don't even know how old he is. Right? It's the infirmity that was 38 years. Even though he was in that condition for 38 years, Jesus Christ could heal him, right? Make him well. Who is beyond the effects of time, right? Only God. Only God. Who can transcend materials? Who can transcend space? Who can transcend time? These are the ways that John is trying to show Jesus' divine origin. Right? Okay, we'll pause here because of time, and we'll pick it up there tomorrow. Today is Thursday already? Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's bow our heads and pray in silence.